That being said, we all know, right? We definitely all know that text messaging has drawbacks. No doubt about it. When we text, we compose things that we might not say through verbal communication, at least in that precise way, right? We've all had experience with that. And why do we do this? Why do we say things over text that we wouldn't say over verbal communication? I think it's because we do not see or hear the other person. Well, you could say, well, this is also true of written communication. Yes. But because text messages can be sent and received instantaneously, we are much more hasty with our words than we would be in a letter. Okay? And again, you might say verbal communication can also be very hasty because verbal communication occurs instantaneously. And I would say, yes, that's true. But again, texting is different because you can edit. In that process of editing, in a rapid back and forth conversation, that process of editing means that you can craft a very interesting and clever message, but in a bad way, right? In a bad way. I am guilty of this at times, right? I get a little too clever and send something I probably shouldn't have said and I would not have said in person. And because this conversation over text is happening so much more rapidly than verbal communication, than written communication, because the texting conversation is happening so much more rapidly than written communication, things then begin to snowball, right? In a worst case scenario, things begin to snowball. And then you find yourself in this bizarre situation where both parties are crafting and editing rapid messages and rapid responses back and forth in a sort of digital jousting, right? I mean, we've all been through this before. And it can be very destructive. It can definitely be very destructive. And of course, we all know, again, that with texting there is vast potential for miscommunication, right? And why is this? Well, why do we tend to miscommunicate over text? Well, like written communication, we do not receive any vocal or visible feedback. But unlike written communication, again, the conversation occurs rapidly, right? And this is where miscommunication can very often come into play, and that miscommunication is rooted in the inability to detect emotion. Now, there are ways to convey emotion in a text message, right? The LOL. It's funny, actually. The LOL does not typically mean laugh out loud anymore. There have been a few times where I've used the LOL and I actually did laugh out loud. But I find it useful, generally speaking. I like the LOL or the what's the other one? The ha ha. I use the ha ha sometimes as well. But you have other ways of conveying emotion. You have the smiley face, right? Or the wink. Everybody knows the wink. But my favorite is the tongue sticking out face. I like the tongue sticking out face, and the reason why I like it is because the tongue sticking out face signals to the receiver that the other person is jesting. And I like that because it lets the other person know, like, hey, look, I'm just having fun. Don't take what I said too seriously. I'm picking on you, or I'm making a joke. I'm jesting. That being said, there is obviously no doubt that emoticons, as we call them, do not quite do the trick. Yeah, that's an understatement. They do not quite do the trick as tone of voice or facial expression in conveying emotion. Obviously, there is not a face for every emotion. And even if there was, you cannot place emoticons all over your message, right? I mean, it would become unreadable. It would ruin the entire message. So you can't do that. But even when there is an emoticon for a particular emotion, like jesting, right? There are different forms of jesting. Jesting is more than simply a tongue sticking out, right, of a smiley face. Yeah. And so what happens is that things in a text conversation, even when emoticons are being used, especially when emoticons are not being used, then you just have nothing. What happens is that things are said that are majorly misunderstood. And it can cause really big problems. And again, like I said, every single person watching this video knows exactly what I'm talking about. One other thing I've noticed with the rise of texting is that fewer people are talking on the phone. And to a degree, that's okay, right? Like sometimes we have something quick to say or to ask, and you don't want to call up. You call up, and you don't. When you call somebody, you don't just simply ask the question and hang up. You have to have a bit of small talk, and texting circumvents that. And that's actually a really nice feature of texting, I think. And even for lengthier conversations, as I said earlier in the first segment, I thoroughly enjoy lengthy and deep text conversations. But sometimes I'm in the mood for a verbal phone conversation. And a reaction you get nowadays when you actually call somebody on the phone, I find it personally to be a bit hilarious, right? You dial their number, and the phone will ring, and you're waiting, and you hear they answer. Hello? I was like, you're calling me? Like it's weird or something. It's like, yeah, I'm calling you. Yeah. And once that sinks in after a few minutes, you're fine. I'm convinced that the reason why people are becoming a bit uncomfortable with actual phone conversations is the inability in a phone conversation to edit words, and the inability to take a moment, to a few minutes, however long you want to take, to consider a reply. The phone conversation, man, it's just it is like bam, bam, bam. You gotta be on your you gotta be on your feet. But in my view, this makes the phone conversation a bit fun as well, and that gets lost a bit with the text messaging conversation. So, despite a few problems, right? And that's okay. I still stand by texting. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's just that when you use it, you ought to be aware of the particular elements of the medium that you are using. And this is true of any medium, right? Any medium comes with costs and benefits and such. And, no doubt, right? No doubt, you have noticed that I have a very primitive phone. I think they call them basic phones, or the derogatory term is a dumb phone, and I'll embrace that term. That's fine. This particular phone is a Nokia 2320, and I think it's from the mid 2000s, about the year 2006 or 2007 or something. I have never owned a smartphone. Oh, look at that! I just got a text message. Oh, who texted me? See, texting is very nice. It's a very nice system. But I've never owned a smartphone, and to be very clear, I do not judge at all. Obviously, there are tremendous benefits from having a smartphone, and so my decision to opt out is simply a personal one. But this begs the question, still, why? Why do you still use this thing? For one, the smartphone to me can be very distracting. And I think this has played a major role in our reduced attention spans. And actually, some psychological studies in recent years have shown that smartphones have reduced our attention spans. Now, maybe that's a cost that is worth it because of the benefits that are accrued from it. Everything's a trade-off, right? But that's definitely a cost of it, reduced attention spans. But nevertheless, if you have good discipline, you're probably okay with the smartphone, right? But knowing myself and some of the more addictive tendencies that I know I have, I worry that I would find myself compulsively checking my favorite websites and my email all day, and I would just rather not be constantly exposed to that. And also, I actually really enjoy the texting experience on this thing. The layout is simple. It's just two functions. It makes calls, and you can send and receive text. And I view it actually, because of that simple layout, I view it much like a blank writing tablet. Just me and the text. That's it. And obviously, with the basic phone, you have to use the T9 keyboard, but I like the T9, to be quite honest. And once you become accustomed to it, it's actually very quick and very easy. And my experience using a T9 just goes back years and years and years, and still use it every day. So not bragging, but I would say that I am a master of the T9 keyboard, and I really like it. I dig it. And if I had I could probably write an entire treatise, or maybe even a book on a T9 keyboard. Although my thumb would really begin to get my thumb would revolt and maybe fall off in the midst of it. But so anyway, so for me, the phone. This is something I've done, but I know and respect lots and lots of people who do just fine on their smartphones. So this is no statement against any of you or all of you who use one. Just thought I would